Well, greetings being. My name is STEVEN Morrison, creator of Spiritual Workout, and I'm here because I was asked to do a general video on the subject we call grief and loss. So that's what I'm here for. We're not here to solve every big issue, but I do want to do my best to convey something about the notion that what I would call a spiritual workout approach to grief and loss might be different from others that you find. I came to the subject in the wake of my partner's death, which occurred before I had really brought spiritual workout into the world, as it were. I wound up writing this book called An Extra Year, Grief and Loss in the New Age. It could also probably be called Spiritual Workout for Grief and Loss. The idea that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, infusing and informing the whole process. The 15 concepts that we utilize here in Spiritual Workout world applied to this process like they would be applied to any other issue or challenge that we are dealing with. Put me in a place where I felt like I had come through an experience in a way that was very, very different from most other people. I felt like the experience had really grown my soul, if you will, and that it had increased my capacity to give and receive love. And there's nothing magical about me as a human being. But I think there was something a little magical or special about the way that I personally chose to go through this process. And all that I've learned as a result of working with so many people in the last 10 years or more, whether it was in an ongoing bereavement group or one-on-one, or any other format. You know, I was just speaking about this subject not too long ago, and if I had to distill the spiritual workout approach to grief and loss from others, and I don't really want to comment on others, the spiritual workout approach to grief and loss is largely, fundamentally, about separating these two things that we lump together that we call grief and loss. I put grief and loss in the subtitle of my own book, as you know, because I think that's what everybody will go searching for. I'm in a grief and loss process here. What do I do? When I was in school to be a psychotherapist, you know, grief and loss is a subject. It's everywhere. And yet, when it comes right down to it, there are distinct differences between loss, the experience, if it's through death, of having had a relationship that is no longer going to happen. It could be loss of a thing like a home. It could be loss of an identity like a career or a job that one has had that is suddenly not there. So, and all manner of other losses that we experience as human beings. So it seems pretty clear that most every human will experience loss. Some once or twice, some many, many, many times, some reasonably easy to navigate and negotiate our ways through, some that just leave us splayed on the ground with no idea of what to do. So loss seems like it is something that will happen. Grief, however, is entirely different. In spiritual workout world, we often say there's what happens and there's what we make it mean. My girlfriend broke up with me is what happened, for example. I'll never be happy again, for example, could be something that I would make that mean. What I'm suggesting to you in this brief, not conversation, is that the moment I make that experience mean that I'll never be happy again, I'll never be happy again becomes my problem. It's a much bigger, longer lasting, if not permanent, problem. In a way that the loss, the experience of the loss simply is not. The loss happens. Sometimes it's sudden, sometimes we know it's coming. Either which way, we naturally integrate it, we get used to it. In most cases, we start to move through. And the experience of the loss changes. However, the grief doesn't necessarily ever change. The grief can, and often does, take on a life of its own. Sticking with this very simple example, girlfriend breaks up with me, I decide I'll never be happy again. I'll never be happy again becomes an experience that I sign up for. Maybe I know I'm doing that and I'm happy to be on that path. But oftentimes we create ideas, thoughts, beliefs about what has happened. We're not so conscious of having done so. And then that's what runs the show. That's why people will come to me with losses that occurred 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, that for these people feel as though it just happened. To my point earlier, they're used to it. They know that it's been a long time since that person was here, or since the thing they lost has been lost. But their experience of it is as though it just happened because they have lumped together, if you ask me, grief and loss, cannot distinguish between the two, and then continue to move through life without ever really experiencing healing. And what do I mean by healing in this? I mean some notion, some way to move through the process, emerge on the other side of it, feel, know, and trust that it has been integrated. It's not like it didn't happen, it happened. And I've moved through it and thus healed from it. It's not like it just happened. I don't think about it the same way today as I thought about it when it happened. I have moved through it and thus healed from it. So if you are somebody who is dealing with a significant loss of any kind, and you are struggling to, as we say, some version of moving through it and healing from it, and that's a struggle, a challenge, you don't quite know how to do it, you don't quite know if you should do it, you don't quite know what the steps might be, then you might consider getting in touch with us here in Spiritual Workout World, because we do have a very specific yet fully customized to you way to move through, should that be something you're looking for. Either which way, I hope we'll meet, and until then,